evening, and welcome again to your transformative program, Politics and Beyond, with your host, Emmanuel Jr. This evening, as we've been doing over the past weeks, we are going to look again at the democracy that Ghana is practicing, and whether or not, indeed, it is a democracy in its true sense, as it is democracy. So today's conversation is going to be centered on the topic, democracy and autocracy. We want to find out and interrogate the facts. We all know that when we are discussing democracy, there are some few things, elements that we need. One has to do with institutions, and the other one has to do with laws. In this country, when we are talking about laws, we are dealing specifically with our supreme law, which has to do with the 92 Constitution. In line with the institutions, I just want to take you through some few figures here. If you look at the Afrobarometer survey that came, where some institutions were mentioned and Ghanaians were asked whether or not they have trust in those institutions. The first one has to do with the courts. The survey suggests clearly that 10% of Ghanaians are those who say that they have trust in the court system of Ghana. The other one has to do with the presidency, as in the executive. And it says that 14% of Ghanaians says that they have trust in the presidency. The police being the security apparatus, 7%. Parliament being the executive, legislature, 8% of Ghanaians have trust. Assemblymen and women, that which has to do with the local governance system, 5%. Now, when we talk of the Electoral Commission, one key institution when it has to do with our democracy, 10% of Ghanaians have trust in it. It tells you clearly that the institutions that we are relying on for our democracy to move on, majority of Ghanaians do not have trust in these institutions. And so you ask yourself, why is it that if you are practicing democracy and the institutions that are supposed to be our backbones, most Ghanaians are saying they don't have trust or they don't have confidence in these institutions? Then we move on to look at what exactly the other part of the other side or the opposite of the democracy is. And we are talking about autocracy. And so, simply put, autocracy is where we only have one person holding all the powers. You know, holding all the powers. That person calls all the shots. That person decides whatever he or she wants to do without necessarily consulting or getting approval from other institutions that are supposed to give those approvals. Now, in Ghana, if you look at the legislature, you look at the executive is supposed to get certain approvals from the legislature. But over the past period, it is so clear that most often the executive does a lot of things without even recognizing the role and the power of the legislature. You remember a typical example that has to do with the passage of the e-levy. Now, democracy, it is the people's will that is supposed to take effect. Unfortunately, there has been bills that has been passed, like the e-levy, where we have so many reports coming out, clearly saying that Ghanaians are not in support. And yet, the executive decided to go ahead. They found a way of influencing the legislature to the extent that some members of parliament who are supposed to represent the interests of their constituents were able boldly to come out and say that the passage of the e-levy was supposed to be a birthday gift to the president. We are wondering whether that is really an example or how democracy is supposed to be practiced. We have instances where there has been the taxpayers' money used or misapplied. And a key example has to do with the building of the so-called, and I put it in inverted commas, so-called cathedral, where we were told that we're not going to use the taxpayers' money for it. And yet it came out that the taxpayers' money was what was being used for that, without approval coming from Parliament. And you can think of so many of them. And that is why it is important for us this evening to really look at the course of governance in this country. Are we practicing democracy or we are practicing autocracy? And that is what the topic is about. This evening, that's what we are going to look at. We are going to interrogate the facts and to find out whether or not, so that we'll stop misleading ourselves, because clearly it looks like we are being misled as a nation. Can it also be that the the 92 Constitution that we are practicing or we are using to practice the democracy that we claim to be practicing, the Constitution itself creates environments for autocrats to strive or to prevail. You are going to get interactive with us, as you have always done. And we have our WhatsApp lines, we have our Facebook links. Just send in your comments and send in your messages, your questions, and all that, and we'll read them for you. We are going to take a commercial break, a quick break, but when we come back, I'm going to introduce to you our guest for this evening. Even before that, there are just about 2 or 3 messages that have come, and I want us to share them with you even before we go for the break. This one says, well, clearly, it is the leader at any given time that will determine whether we are practicing democracy or autocracy. The bar stops with the leader. Of course, with this experience, making reference to the current experience, the Constitution needs to be looked at again. The other one says that we are clearly practicing democratic dictatorship, where we are allowed to vote once, and that is all. There's someone who says that, and this is coming from Donald, he says that we are not practicing democracy, we are not practicing autocracy, we are practicing what we call demotocracy. I wonder what that means. Okay, he says, meaning democracy under autocratic rule. Anyway, it is going to be an interactive one, and it's going to be an interesting one. So stay tuned. Our WhatsApp line, 0556 999999. We are going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll continue with it. Just stay tuned. Program Politics and Beyond. And I'm your host, Emmanuel, Engineer. This evening, we are privileged to have with us a man I have known, and I'm sure all of us know him. He's not a stranger in this country at all. A young, vibrant man, someone who really speaks with command when it comes to matters on governance. You know, Professor Jampu, runs for Jampu. He's a University of Ghana lecturer. Senior lecturer, right?
No.
Not yet. Okay. So
let me quickly correct. I've always been I've always had the cause to speak to this. I'm not a senior lecturer.
Right.
Note this.
Okay.
I signed on as an assistant lecturer.
Okay.
And then you move on to become a lecturer. Then you are promoted to senior lecturer. Then you are promoted to associate professor. And then you get to your peak, beyond which you can't go again, to the rank of full professor. So assistant lecturer, senior lecturer, associate professor, and then professor.
Which one is Professor Emeritus?
Professor Emeritus is not a rank.
You
don't progress towards it. I mean, that one, after you are done with your work and then you have trained other people to become like you, then your department will decide to acknowledge you or honor you. So it's not, that one is not by your research and the publications. It hasn't. So if you call me a senior lecturer, you have demoted me drastically. I was a lecturer from April 3rd, 2005 to somewhere 2010.
That's right.
Then a senior lecturer from 2011 to 2015. Then associate professor from 2016 to 2019.
And now
full professor from 2019 to now. So if you refer to me as senior
professor of political science,
you have downgraded
professor of political science. My own brother, Professor Ransford Jampu. My apologies.
No problem. I may be young, but I'm old.
Yes. And honestly, I think it's not just me, but I believe most of our viewers will appreciate the education you've given us when it comes to the ranking.
Yes.
Honestly, genuinely, I didn't know this ranking. I never knew this ranking. So, Professor of Political Science, Professor Ransford Jampu, he's our guest. He's also the president of UTAG, the University of Ghana. Prof, welcome to Politics and Beyond.
Thank you for having me.
We are so privileged to have you. It's been a long time.
We've known ourselves for long. My days at the IEA, I used to attend programs
Exactly. We go way back, and I'm so happy that we still have our brotherhood and friendship together. Prof, today this is what we are discussing. We are looking at whether democracy or autocracy. We want to interrogate and really come to that agreement as to where we are and whether or not we are really making progress. Are we not misleading ourselves? Prof, what is your initial take on this?
No, so when we talk about democracy, we are referring to a system of government where the governing power is exercised by the people themselves, whether directly or indirectly.
Right.
It used to be direct, unmediated democracy. We call it democracy in its classical form, where in ancient Athenian Greek, people met together under one big tree and decided on how they wanted to govern themselves. They didn't need anybody to represent them. They didn't need a president. They didn't need a member of parliament. They did it themselves. That's democracy in its classical form. However, with the astronomical growth in sizes of population and the complexities involved in modern day governance, it became necessary that, look, we cannot all have one big tree and go and sit under and govern ourselves directly. So they introduced what we call representative democracy, a system where you would elect people to go serve your interests in parliament, you elect president and order. So that's democracy, a system of government where the governing power is exercised by the people themselves, either directly or indirectly. When you talk about autocracy, it's a system of government headed by one person who has absolute powers. A system of government headed by one person with all the powers. Now you want to find out whether Ghana is a democracy or an autocracy. You see, in theory, Ghana is supposed to be a democracy. But practically, we are an autocratic state. Now, what do I mean by that? You see, you have to look at the origin or the genesis or why or how the 1992 Constitution, came about. Listen to this carefully. Now, we had been under military rule for so many years. I think, if you like, we had been governed by a soldier, Jerry Rawlings, for around that time, over 11 years. He never meant to hand over power.
That's right.
At one point in time, he was asked to hand over, and then he retorted, to whom? Who should I hand over power to? So Jerry Rawlings never wanted to hand over power. But in our epoch, in implementing various strategies for development in Ghana, one strategy we got to was what we call the application of political conditionalities. We had implemented a program called the Structural Adjustment Program. Now, Structural Adjustment Program in Ghana was working, but was not working so well. It had imposed a lot of hardships on the people, the very people whose burden the Structural Adjustment Program was supposed to alleviate. Now, those who introduced or who brought the Structural Adjustment Program to us that we should implement as a condition for more assistance and loans had to review the implementation of the Structural Adjustment Program. And they realized that elsewhere, the Structural Adjustment Program was working. But in other countries like Africa and in Ghana, it was not working. And one underlying explanation they found was that areas like Ghana, where the Structural Adjustment Program was not working, was also as a result of the fact that these countries or areas were not democratic. So to be able to attract more assistance, you have to democratize. Or if you don't democratize, then we are not going to be giving you assistance. So this forced all dictators and military rulers to take off their military uniforms and to wear civilian attire. Because if you don't do that, then we are not going to get assistance. That was why then Rawlings had to shed off his military skin and to become a civilian and to organize an election in which he could then, around the time, be described as the referee, the footballer, the linesman, the match commissioner. He won everything. But before the election of 1992, then there had to be a constitutional arrangement. You had to put together a constitution that would serve as a framework to govern whatever he was going to be doing. Don't forget that. So when Rawlings was handing over power to J. Kufuor, he openly said that he had never been a fan of multi-party democracy. So he never believed in it. So in fashioning out the constitution, it was prepared, it was prepared under his supervision, under his watch. So it was a constitution that was prepared to tell him that, look, we know you don't want to go, but don't worry. We are going to give you a certain fundamental document called the Constitution that will make you govern the country as if you are still a dictator or as if you are still a military ruler. So the 1992 Constitution was prepared for an autocrat, to be able to govern in a manner that makes him feel that, look, I'm still a soldier and I still can do things I used to do when I was a military leader, even though I am in a democracy. So take note. The 1992 Constitution was not prepared for democratic governance. It was prepared for Jerry Rawlings to be able to still feel good as a soldier and at the same time as a civilian, or as a civilian, ruler. So everyone who has governed Ghana before, or every political elite who knows governance, has commented on this. When J. Kufuor was looking for power, they all spoke against the Constitution. But when they got into power and power is sweet, they kept quiet. Atta Mills, John Mahama, and all that, when they were looking for power, they all spoke against the Constitution. But power is sweet. Akufo-Addo, when he was looking for power, he spoke against the Constitution. And indeed, Atta Mills was the one who, after some work had been done by us at the IEA,
yes.
were the first to
yes.
recommend or make the proposals for the Constitution to be reviewed.
Yeah.
President Atamels bought into it. When he set up the Constitutional Review Commission, they went around the whole nation. They consulted everybody, including President Akufo-Addo, about the Constitution. They all made their recommendations as to which part of the Constitution they feel must undergo review. And no one kicked against the constitutional review process. And unfortunately, power changed hands. The one who was consulted about the constitution review process also got into power. And because power is sweet,
it's sweet.
He has, in fact, he has decided to truncate or not to abandon the whole constitutional review process, even though a lot of state resources had been expended in the process of reviewing the constitution. And that is our challenge as a developing country. We are plagued with the challenge of policy discontinuity. If a policy is initiated by a government, it goes out of office, and that policy is not guaranteed in terms of continuity. We are not assured. So the government is talking about free SHS now. There's no guarantee that others may want to continue. Government has done X, Y, Z. You don't have a 100% guarantee. Even though our directive principles of state policy says that as much as possible, policies initiated by predecessor government, we must continue. We don't do that as a people. So we are always starting anew as a people. And no nation can develop if it is always starting anew. So if you're asking whether the Constitution promotes democracy or dictatorship, I will tell you that in theory, everyone sees us as a democratic, we are transitional democracy, and we are trying higher, and we are trying harder. But our Constitution was not created to help us to climb higher the ladder of democratic progression, because it gives all powers to the executive president in a manner that makes the executive president like a political king Kong. And political king Kongism and democracy are not bedfellows. Political king Kongism is about conferring absolute powers on one person. And as Lord Acton has argued, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
That's really an interesting one. Prof, it looks like you've just summarized the whole thing. Now, the issue is, it is established from all angles that we are pretending to be practicing democracy, because the backbone, which has to do with the 92 Constitution itself, does not promote democracy. It was produced so that it will just, serve as, pampering autocrats.
It does not promote democracy, and then also it does not promote constitutionalism. Let me explain this.
Yes.
You see, when we talk about constitutionalism, it is not the presence of a constitution. No. When we talk about constitutionalism, you are talking about the putting in place of mechanisms that checks the exercise of powers. You see, so there must always be what Michael Quay refers to as countervailing authority. Countervailing authority simply means there must always be the existence of a power that will counter the exercise of power. Now, if you are lucky, and then the Constitution itself counters the exercise of power, then you can say that the Constitution promotes constitutionalism. But our Constitution does not actually counter the exercise of power. It actually expands the frontiers of power of whoever is given the mandate to govern. So it gives more powers than countering the exercise of power. And that is what you can do for a military dictator who doesn't want to go, but you want to pamper him to leave.
Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. At the end of the day, it is the citizens that will be suffering. Because we are being misled to think that we are practicing democracy, but in reality, we are rather practicing autocracy. What can we do as citizens to ensure that this line of misleading changes?
Well, you see, like I said, when I was at the IEA somewhere around 2006, we undertook a study aimed at auditing the gaps in Ghana's democracy. The study was led by a Zimbabwean scholar. It was initiated by a Zimbabwean scholar called Professor Reginald Austin. He left. Then we had Professor Kofi Kumado, Professor Kwame Nahoy, Dr. Haji Professor Yao Shumesi, and then myself as a small boy, I'm doing their legwork for them. We undertook that study, and that study culminated in a document we call the Democracy Consolidation Strategy Paper. Now, this DCSP made a lot of recommendations. Key amongst them is the fact that even though the 1992 Constitution has served us well, it's nevertheless contained provision that hinder the maturation of our democratization process, and so it must be reviewed. We saw this idea through Professor Kwame Ahoy to Professor Mills, and Professor Mills bought into it. Professor Mills set up the Constitutional Review Commission that undertook a nationwide public consultation. Please, guys, listen to me. The Constitutional Review Commission undertook a nationwide public consultation among Ghanaians. And the good people of Ghana said, yes, we think that the Constitution must be reviewed. Okay, so if Ghanaians have said this, what business has anyone stopping the demand or the requirement or the hopes and aspirations of the people of Ghana? So people of Ghana, you were consulted during the CRC consultation process. You made the case for constitution review. If now we no longer are even talking about the state of constitutional review process, then I awaken your consciousness that begin to demand accountability from the powers that be. Fortunately, I've heard John Mahama saying, as part of the things he wants to do if he gets the chance, that he's going to resurrect the constitutional review process because it was initiated by President Mills. That's a good thing. But even before this happens, the good people of Ghana, I call on you. It was an exercise that you endorsed, you were consulted, and all that. Power belongs to the people. Sometimes we are so docile a people. Sometimes we tend to be coward. I've always said Ghana belongs to Ghanaians. Ghana does not belong to any political elite. The power that is exercised by a political elite in arrogance belongs to you, the good people of Ghana. And so, if you were consulted and you made the case that the Constitution has served us well, but it must be reviewed, and it is being sat on, the process, the documentations are being kept on the shelves and being allowed to gather dust. It's up to you and I. I am arousing your consciousness. Arise, Ghana, good people of Ghana. Let us demand accountability. Let us begin to ask questions. Let us begin to take on the political establishment proactively and within the confines of law and demand that they do what we want them to do for us.
Aside Ghanaians giving their opinions to the CRC, that's the Constitutional Review Commission, what we should also appreciate is that the amount of money that was used by the commission comes from you and I, because it is our taxes that was used for it. And so if there's no continuity, what it simply means is that your tax, my tax, has gone to waste. Fortunately, we have what we call the hung parliament, where literally both parties in parliament have the same strength. Couldn't parliament have initiated, ensured that the executive continue with the CRC's work?
You see, we are excited when we got this hung parliament.
Yes.
But it appears that it has not served as so well, or it has not met the expectations of many of us. They've done their best. But their best, in my view,
it's not enough.
It's not good enough. I mean, you can talk about the speaker. For the first time in the history of Ghana's Fourth Republic, the speaker a certain parliamentary oversight authority over the executive, president and all that. But generally, this hung parliament has been in the habit of always raising higher our hopes. And then when it gets to the time that they will have to act, then something else will happen. We are not going to approve this minister. This minister, we will not pass him. His vetting, the minister that they hunted a lot, the minister that They spoke a lot that they are going to disapprove.
She had the highest
in terms of votes.
Can you imagine?
Okay, so the hung parliament we have, unfortunately, have a lot of people who are my friends, but they are a disappointment to many of us. And we're expecting them to do more than what they have done. I'm not saying they haven't done anything. I mean, if you look at how Parliament has functioned from 1992 up to the time that we got this hung Parliament, you can say that some way, somehow, they have asserted a certain parliamentary authority, but I was expecting, or many Ghanaians were expecting, that they would do more. So in spite of the fact that we are a hung Parliament, we've never had a situation where Parliament said that, look, Mr. President, you gave us this nominee. We think that it is your nomination, but we believe that this particular nominee hasn't got what it takes to serve as minister or something, so go change him. We are not going to approve him. We've never had that. Every now and then, we allow excessive partisanship and then some other things behind the scenes that because you and I, we are not there to see, we cannot mention. But other things behind the scenes come in to influence them to vote in a manner that makes them stand contrary to impressions and expectations they ingrained, or they keep ingraining in the psyche of many Ghanaians.
It looks like both parliaments, the executive, anyone who comes to power on a political background, it looks like they are enjoying the provisions in the current constitution. And so they wouldn't want it to be reviewed. And probably that is why it is...
No, particularly stagnant. The executive. Okay?
Executive,
particularly because it's the executive that all the powers go to. So, but you know, it's just like the call for public funding of political parties. The first person who told me this was Dr. Obed Asamoah. I know he's still alive. He told us that the idea was mooted by the then government of the NDC, 1996.
Okay.
That, oh, well, there should be some public fund of political parties to create a level playing field for all political parties. And he said that when he raised that issue, people were like, do you want us to give
to strengthen our opponents so that they'll come and fight us?
So it was thrown away. They were in government then. But they got into opposition and they liked it. Okay, those who were in opposition and got into government, they also said we will not do it because so when regimes are in government, they don't like it.
That's right.
When they get into opposition, they like it. Okay, but we cannot govern a country and allow politicians to dictate to us what is good and what is bad, depending on where they are, whether they are in government or they are in opposition. Not the same way. We cannot allow politicians to dictate to us. Okay, whether the constitution review process is good or bad, depending on where they are. And I like it to say that Professor Mills, at least, was a president.
Right.
And he initiated, the process. Process that was going to curtail extensively most of his powers. Okay, and I thought it was something that we should have all applauded.
Exactly.
But President Akufo-Addo, I don't know. You see, he himself publicly has never commented on the constitution review process.
Ever since he came to office.
Since he became
for the
president,
past almost 8 years now.
He's never commented on it publicly. He's never said anything. Behind the scenes, we hear that, well, he has his own reason. But when you were consulted, I think you should have made reservations known to the committee. Or even if you didn't like it, you see, democracy is not about one person's view.
Or what you don't
it's about the views of the generality of those who hold the power of the land. And so it's not about what you like or what you don't like. If the good people of Ghana says, you see, the constitution, like we say, is a fundamental document. Okay, that provides the framework for our governance. If it is faulty, everything else is faulty.
It's faulty, Now
look at all the challenges plaguing us. They can all be traced to our faulty 1992 constitution. And I don't know anyone who has read and understand this process who would disagree. I mean, if you want to disagree, it means you do not really
you don't
even
appreciate the content of it.
Understand the content of the Constitution. And you are not. Look, the president he's appointing everybody. Everybody is beholden to the president, to the point that even appointees who are clothed with independence still leave.
They succumb to it.
They still
and parliamentarians are also doing the same. So they are scared because they want to catch the eye of their president.
Yes, I mean.
So that they will be made minister, deputy minister.
And those who are also not members of the government, okay, because the president has access to all the resources of the land and can find a way
of frustrating them,
of greasing their palm. I mean, you see, money is blood.
That's right.
So they are not able to overly. I mean, people, instead of taking the president on, they are thinking about their parliamentary primaries. Oh, look, Charlie, talk to you behind the scenes. Look, let us go easy, because they are the ones who will still come and help us to be able to contest our primaries. They say some of these things, and it doesn't help our democracy. Other people have built their country, their countries. They build their countries well, okay. And we go there, we admire, we look at their systems, their institutions, their structures. But it appears that Ghana, all of us have traveled before. All of us know what happens elsewhere. But when we get into our country, it's as if we don't want to do the right thing. We know that the fundamental law of the land is problematic, but so long as it is conferring all powers on us and we are enjoying all the powers, we don't want to do anything about it. But when you get into a position, we begin to cry. You cannot govern a country and expect development with this kind of backward, selfish mentality.
Clearly, we can't also rely on these politicians, especially the executive, if we want to make any meaningful progress. The bottom line is the citizens. Is there any other way? We may want to talk about demonstrations and all that, maybe demonstrations, but beyond demonstration, are there any practical ways that the citizens can engage in to pin these politicians and say that, look, whether you like it or not, you must pursue
one of the challenges of every developing country that must be tackled, just as the challenge of unemployment, just as the challenge of infrastructure, is to tackle the challenge of public ignorance.
That's nice.
Yes. Okay. So, just as you are looking for resources to be able to build hospitals, just as you are going begging with a leaking bowl for resources to be able to construct roads, you see, begging with leaking bowl. We beg, we get the money, and the money
it goes into people's pockets.
Just as we do all these, we should also go look for resources to tackle public ignorance.
Isn't that what NCC is supposed to do?
So I am coming there. So we set up the National Commission for Civic Education.
Exactly.
And because their mandate is to provide civic education to tackle public ignorance, politicians are not too comfortable about a knowledgeable citizenry. Okay? So the National Commission for Civic Education has remained underfunded since its creation, and it will, if our politicians, if we don't begin to change the kind of politicians we have, the NCCE would suffer financial suffocation in perpetuity, because the politician of today, it is not in his interest for the citizens to be enlightened.
That's right.
Okay, so what do we have to do? We will have to ensure that the citizens are enlightened. But who does that? Is the NCC. The NCC always hasn't got money to be able to sustain. When was the last time you heard about the NCC doing anything in the media? Okay, I think that it is now a place where people just go there to guarantee their monthly salary and allowances. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. So what can we do for the city? It is up to you and I. That's why I'm always talking. Okay, that's why some of us, we are always talking. Okay, and one of the challenges in dealing with public ignorance is that when you are fighting for the public, the public fights against you.
Exactly.
You understand?
Exactly.
And we know this.
Exactly.
The very people you are fighting for, you ask yourself. I mean, the people.
Whether it's worth
it. My hometown people. We say we don't like what the arrangements that have been put in place for this lithium deal.
Yes.
I decided to lead and all that.
I remember.
And come and see. The very people you are fighting, especially some of the chiefs.
Yeah.
Some of the chiefs.
They turn against you.
There are certain things you can't say publicly, but some of the chiefs. You look at the kinds of things they are saying and their conduct, their demeanor. And I ask myself, but what do you think I need? By the grace of God, I need nothing. Yeah. I have risen through the ranks, become a professor of political science.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
I'm not looking for anything, but I'm fighting for you. But the very people you fight for, then they'll be fighting. You see, so you go to social media, you speak your mind about something without malice, just with a view to shaping things. We took on Jerry Rawlings. We took on Jay Kufuor. And a lot of people, you see, whether it is selective amnesia or some of us are demented, I don't know. But I started taking on governments from Rawlings' time.
I remember.
Okay? Yeah. Jay Kufuor, I was among the first to criticize his size of government because he had criticized Jerry Rawlings' size of government. So we criticized Jay Kufuor. Okay, when Atamils came, we criticized him. When President Muhammad took over, we were part of those who critiqued him to make him unpopular, to be ousted. Now you think that we have done that and Akufo-Addo comes, and because we criticized John Mahama, you have to keep quiet. We are not that dogmatics. We are not bootlickers. Some of us, we've gotten to where we've gotten to by dint of the grace of God and hard work. And we are not looking for those kinds of... So we do these things to help the ordinary people who do not have the voice. But unfortunately, when you are doing that, then we have allowed ourselves to be so polarized on partisan grounds that because when you say it and it doesn't go for this, then they begin to fight you. Okay? But the point is this: some of us, we are aware that in fighting ignorance, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
The ignorant person you are fighting for will begin to fight you, and we know it's a price to pay to fight against ignorance. So we'll continue to do, but we urge people like you and other academics to also come out. Because the NCC will never get money to be able to do the kinds of things that we are doing for free.
Before we come to the follow up on the NCC, I remember very well, to add up to what you've just said, I remember very well when I started speaking against corruption. Mr. Martin Amidu called me and told me that, look, if you want to fight corruption, be mindful of two things. First one, the people you are fighting for, they are the same people who will come against you, especially when the system decides to crash you. And, you know, and it is really true. But you see, the funny thing is, probably just you said, maybe there's some selective amnesia or somewhere. They forget that it is not something new that we are just doing. No. I started criticizing even the late Atanos's administration. His Excellency John Mahama's administration. I was very, very hard. Very, very hard. And then all of a sudden, when a new administration comes, and it's the same administration that when you were doing that thing before, they were hailing you. And today, they have forgotten that you are rather being consistent, but they rather think that you are against them. And it just, you know, we can't build any institution, we can't build any country, any economy, we can't build Ghana like that. Unfortunately, partisanship has broken us so much into two that today, people that will even come close doors to tell you that what you are doing well, so go ahead and do it. They are the same people who will be on the stage and be criticizing and be fighting you. But coming back to the NCC, I agree. We have had this argument so many times that NCC is under-resourced and all that. As a commission, don't they also have the mandate to be able to partner and raise funds beyond government?
Well, it depends on who leads. Okay, the fundraising and appreciating the role you play in a society, oftentimes, you see, depends on the one who is leading. Let me tell you, one as the director for Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. The university would give resources to the various centers every year. But I sat down and I said that I don't need the resources that will be given to my center.
Yeah.
I think I have mouth, I have hands, I have brains to write. Okay, I can go and talk to the EU delegation and other the EU member countries to provide funding for my center, so that I wouldn't be dependent on the little money that government is giving to my center through the university. Okay, so most at times I will go to a German embassy, I go to the Netherlands embassy, I'll go to the Italian embassy, I'll go to them, talk to them, and they will provide funding for me to run the center. Okay, so I was doing that myself, but it was me. Okay, in much the same way, if you are given the opportunity to head some of these institutions, it's one of the things that you should look at. To become a full professor, one of the requirements is your ability, is the funds that you have raised. You must demonstrate it. How much money have you brought to your university?
That's right.
Okay,
that's right.
In the same way, to allow us people to head some of these institutions, you should also ask that, is he a fundraiser? Tomorrow, if government funding is not coming, is she able to, on his own, has he got a clout? Has he got the networks and persona to be able to go to others to say that, look, give me money to run my organization? Are they able to do that on a sustained basis? It's something that we should find out. But unfortunately, all appointments by politicians or by political elites are not based on meritocracy. They are based on excessive partisanship. Who was able to be hurt during the electioneering campaign?
That's right.
Who was able to insult at the fastest rate in the last time we were campaigning? Who lost his or her property for the sake of the party? These are the kinds of things that we look out for. It's not who can do it. Okay? So those who can do it, we cannot allow you to be part. But those who cannot do it, so you see, it's all about winner takes all. It's all about excessive partisanship that dissipates the human resource base, the scarce human resource base that we have in it. It dissipates it. Because you will never be appointed. Or you speak your mind. But we have to look for those who will be docile, those that we can control, those who would not say anything to offend us. But these are people who would also be able to work. If they work and they work well, you take their glory.
Honestly, I think that NCC doesn't have any excuse. And for me, in as much as politicians will want to starve them of resources so that they will not be able to do their work, I also believe that if we have the right leaders leading NCC's story should be something different. It is just because those that have been leading NCC over the past period, clearly, they are not exhibiting the leadership skills. And that is the reality. We are going to take a very quick commercial break. And when we come back, we'll go through the messages that has come. And then Prof will be able to respond to some of them, or if all of them. And then we'll also look at the last lap of the conversation. Stay tuned. we have a very limited time. And so I'm going to go through some of the messages that have come, and then we'll get back to Prof for us to continue. This one says, thank you, Mr. Host. Our constitution is an it should be autocratic, not automatic, autocratic constitution, but in a democratic form, where electorates are allowed to vote. For us to really enjoy our democracy, our constitution has to be amended. This is Gabriel from Accra. This one says the constitution was designed for an autocrat to promote electoral democracy. A constitution that undermines separation of the powers of the executive from the powers of public accountability, i.e. judiciary, attorney general, auditor general, shraj, etc., can never promote the will of the people for equality and collective well-being. This is from Dr. Daniel Apia. Doc, thanks for doing the watching. There's a question from K.A. Apia. What legal instrument did the president use to demolish the judges' houses to make way for his cathedral? This one says, hello, I'm Dora, listening to you live from Central Region, Asin Bosumadje. I hope I got it right. I really love your show. Keep it up. I also like your outfits. All right, thank you. This one says, wow, Prof. Ransford Jampo is a gem. I've been educated on our constitution framework. Keep it up. Kweku from Nungwa. Good evening. Prof has given me joy and happiness this evening. He is right. Nana Akufo-Addo has disgraced and disappointed Ghanaians. We are in autocracy under Akufo-Addo. This is from Agbema Flay Emmanuel from Avatime, Vani, in Volta region. Good evening. I'm really enjoying the conversation. In fact, I love Professor Jampo anytime he's on TV talking. I really enjoy his analysis. Keep it up. Keep it up, Prof. This is from Nathaniel Ashaiman. Good evening, Emmanuel Wilson. Africans by our nature are autocratic in our upbringing. That's why we are brought up as timid, docile, coward, and weakling citizens, which Professor Jampo alluded to. Any African youth who asserts himself or herself is seen as bossy, too known, overbearing, and arrogant. What we are practicing in Ghana today as democracy is a big deception. We are only practicing what our kinship across the country are practicing. Finito. Late founder Rawlings was more of a consultative personality than this corrupt system we've clothed ourselves with. Okay. Is Rwanda practicing what we are practicing in Ghana? And that's a question. So this is from John Achu Kakito from Teshin. I agreed with Prof. The review of the Constitution is eminent. The power of the President is overwhelming. The following areas must equally be reviewed. 1. Article 71. 2. Local government admin. 3. Participation of chiefs in politics. 4. National Development Plan. 5. Number of ministers, etc. This is Malik, tutor of Tamasco, Tamale. It's always refreshing listening to Prof. My question is, do we need to practice politics in Ghana at all? I ask this question because I think politics has been the bane of our woes. Don't we have any provisions in the Constitution which will allow citizens to stand against bad government without the Parliament, since Parliament cannot be trusted? This is Wilson, okay, so my namesake. In fact, we are in trouble in Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah's beloved country. How can the whole Minister of Energy speak like this? In fact, Addo and some of his people don't respect Ghanaians and themselves at all. Opoku Prempeh should know that power is just like an army officer in a uniform. The moment the uniform is hung up to the wall, nobody will salute you again. And power too can deceive you. So those who are power drunk like Matthew Opoku Prempeh and his boss, the president, should be very careful. This from James K. Saba. Okay, so the messages keep coming. Prof, these are interesting messages that have come in. I don't know if there are any ones that you want to respond to.
Somebody is saying, why should we, is Bannon talking about...
Yes, why should we even practice politics at all?
Let me just say that, you see, politics is not bad. Okay. Politics is essentially decision making.
Yeah.
Okay. Man is naturally a political animal. See, if you strip man of politics. He doesn't become, you take away his humanity from him. So we are not, politics is good. It's just about decision making. Deciding on what to do at what particular point in time, and it's politics. Okay. What I'm sure he's referring to is partisan politics.
I agree.
Okay. It's partisan politics.
I agree.
That, in my view, we are not practicing very well, and so has bred a lot of political madness in our body politic. You see very decent people, very educated people, just because he's a member of NDC or he's a member of MPP, suddenly he's not thinking. And the kinds of things he's saying, you're asking, but is he not educated? Okay, just because he belongs to a political party. I ask myself, but why? Can't we belong to NDC and can't we belong to MPP and still have our hairs properly screwed on so that, yes, I'm in NDC or I'm in MPP, but look, this thing that is going on is bad. Can't we be citizens like that? But just because I belong to NDC or MPP, all of a sudden I can't reason. And you see that the kinds of things he's offering a certain defense for something that is indefensible, and he's trying very hard to do it to sound convincing and all that. But are you not educated?
It's sad. Let me just add to it. You remember this e-levy wahala, which brought so much tension into the system? Years on, maybe 2 or so years on, we have the same party leaders. His Excellency the Vice President Baumia, saying that if he should become president, he's going to ensure that the e-levy is taken off. And you have the same members of parliament that were in parliament, MPP parliamentarians that were in parliament, doing everything to ensure that it is passed because they believe it was okay. As long as it is a gift for their president or the leader of their party, it is okay. And yet these are the same people sitting at the same place and now clapping because their vice president says that when
I said excessive partisanship breeds political madness.
It just doesn't make sense.
Okay,
it makes no sense.
But they are aware that we too, we are ignorant. They are aware that we too, we are so partisan. And so even if what they are doing doesn't make sense, we would adduce reasons to make what they are doing that is not sensible become sensible. They know.
Is it also because yes, leaders have their share of the whole business. I always ask the question, is it also the fact that the citizens themselves have to be blamed? I mean, they need to be blamed because you see, leadership is a reflection.
I know, but I've told you two things. I said there's public ignorance, and then there's also excessive,
so it falls under the public ignorance.
Excessive partisanship. Okay, but you see, the public ignorance is the overarching problem.
Sure.
Then under it you have excessive partisanship.
That's right.
If you're very knowledgeable,
right,
you not pander to this ignorance. Okay, that we were all there when we said this is good. And then our flag bearer is now telling us that it's not good, so we will change it. And then all of us who said it is good are not even explaining to Ghanaians that, actually, it's only a fool who doesn't change his mind. They are not even saying this as an excuse. But they are all of a sudden jumping on to support it.
Exactly.
But unfortunately for them, it's not all of us who can be fooled.
I keep saying
Some of us, we taught them.
I keep saying
Those members of parliament, some of us, we taught them.
I keep saying it.
You cannot fool your teacher. You are not wiser than me.
We are going to wrap up very soon because our time is up. But forgive me, messages keep coming and we've been receiving complaints that we don't engage our viewers enough. This one says, this clueless government promised that MCs, etc. will be elected by the citizens. But what happened? Well, as for that one, I personally, I was 100% against. We are not against the elections of MCs and DCs and the rest, but we are against the introduction of partisanship to that level. So I think that is what really happened. Good evening, Mr. Wilson. Our problem as a nation can be put at the doorstep of the greedy journalists who don't see anything evil about MPP. How can a journalist say he has not been paid? He has not been paid to say good things about NDC, but only bad things. This is Ben Osei from Asamankese. President Akufo-Addo, who set up the Office of the Special Prosecutor's Office, has been described as the mother serpent of corruption. So Prof is fighting a lost battle on fighting corruption. Well, it will never be a lost battle. Trust you me. We are not fighting a lost battle. It's a matter of time. This is Prekese Kwame, aristocrat from Kaswa Old Barrier. Good evening, sir. Mr. Host. Excellent delivery by Prof. Let's speak truth to power. My name is Kunalese Johnson Clifford from Ej Kojo, Tema West. Good evening. I pray Professor Jampo will live long in life, because whenever the Lord calls him to glory, I will stop listening to political affairs. This is Awilu Atito Lawrence, GPRTU. Ho. Politicians have failed us. We need military takeover. At least it's better than using autocracy under democracy. Prof, before you wrap up, we are in an election year. 7th of December, we are going to go to the polls. And I have said that when you go to the polls, the few minutes you go to thumbprints, put your thumb to select, that is not what is important. But you should appreciate the fact that whatever decision you take, it is going to cover 4 years of your life. And you should think about it that way. Prof, we are going into an election. What advice do you give to electorates?
Well, Jay Kufuor said something. So we're sitting in Natuabapa. We are going to go into 2024 elections. Let Ghanaians look into their living conditions and vote. If
there should be a yardstick, what should they be looking out for? To make the votes?
Still their living conditions.
Their living conditions should be the fundamental.
The essence of governance is to solve problems. Okay? So you cannot, if you come to my level 300 elective class governance and leadership, the first thing after we have, we say to students, after we have traced the origin of government, is to say that the essence of governance is solve problems. So you put people in place to govern to solve your problems. Okay, so we have people in place, they are governing. Have they solved your problems? If you think they have solved your problems and you want them to continue, vote for them. If they haven't solved your problems and you think that your problems are too many, just an unexamined life, Socrates say, is not worth living. So examine your life, examine your living conditions, and let that determine how you'd vote. And indeed, this is what we all refer to as issues-based voting. Let not the voting or voter behavior be shaped by propaganda, be shaped by insults, be shaped by emotions. If you vote on that line, you are not being wise. Wise people, wise Ghanaians, dear wise Ghanaians, examine your life and see whether your living conditions are good or they are not good. And let this determine your voting pattern in the 2024 elections.
Honestly, I'm struggling to bring the program to a close, because I personally am really enjoying the whole conversation, and I'm really struggling to bring it to a close. I can see my cameraman also nodding that it should go on. Prof, just the very last one, very, very last one, and then you can add your closing remarks to it. Specifically, what should be changed in the Constitution?
No, there are the whole Constitution itself should be thrown away. And then we should do, if you look at the Constitutional Review Commission's report, the kinds of things that they want, we have to do
review it again
all over. Because it contains so many provisions that hinder the maturation of our democratization process. So if you say what, there are so many of them. But if you want me to just mention one, then I'm saying that let us take away all provisions that makes the president of the republic a political king kong. Why? Because power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolutely. Viewers, this is where time will allow us. I believe strongly that we will have another episode with Professor Jampo. We will surely do, as we prepare ourselves for the 2024 elections. I believe you've learned a lot. Remember, this episode is going to be repeated on this same platform, TVXYZ, this coming Wednesday at 11 a.m. Just make a time. Call in your colleagues, your friends who did not watch this episode, because we are preparing our minds. We are transforming our minds, particularly as we get into the election month, as we get into the election day, as we get into 7th of December. to make the right decisions. Next week, we are going to have another interactive episode. But till we meet again next week, I am still your host, Emmanuel Wilson, and I want to say, on behalf of all of you, Prof, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate everything. And I personally appreciate the education on the rank. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now I know my brother is really at the top. Prof, congratulations.
Thank you.
So, viewers, this is where time will allow us. Till we meet again next week, it is good night.